In this first demonstration, I'm going to show you how to add requirements manually, how to arrange them in a hierarchy, change the position with simple drag and drop, and add a downstream reference to a system requirement. Here's a default Codebeamer project, and I'm in the custom requirement specification tracker. I'm just going to hit plus to add a new requirement. This is going to be called chassis requirement. Here's my first one. What I'm looking at is the document view, and it shows me the description, the summary, and all the attributes here on the right-hand side. As I hit the plus, I can add a new one. Chassis material requirement. With simple drag and drop, I can arrange a hierarchy between the chassis material requirement and the chassis requirement in general. I can also change the type to a folder. When I do that, work will not be done against the chassis requirement, but more against its components. I'll now add a downstream reference to a system requirement. Just hit a plus and select system requirement specification. Chassis metal material should be 5 millimeters thick. I now added a system requirement, and coming over to the right hand side I can see the downstream reference. Now let's look at the import from Word. It will be a mundane task to create more requirements manually, so instead I'm going to import the document that I received from my customer. And oftentimes that's a business requirement, so it's not just more practical, but it's actually required. More and import. First I'll need to select a file. It could be Word or Excel. I'm going to choose a Word file. And then hit next. We're going to apply import rules to split the document into multiple trackers. I'm going to say import into current tracker if the style is heading 1. Import into the system requirement tracker in case it's heading 2. And finally, import into the test cases if the style is heading 3. Once I'm ready with the definition, I can do a preview. It's going to give me the record counts, and on the left-hand side we can also see the imported structures, and we can even review the text. The icons reflect the type of tracker that we're importing into, the flag being a symbol for the test case tracker. If everything looks good, we can hit next and continue with the import. Done. And as I hit the transmission, I can see the downstream reference pointing at the system requirements. After the successful import, let's review all of our records in the Traceability browser. First, we'll look at customer requirements, then system requirements, and finally, test cases. Hit go, and we can see how the electrical engine requirement has a system requirement meeting emission standards, which now has 2 test cases. I'm going to show you some of the editing features of Codebeamer. We'll open up a custom requirement, we'll start modifying the requirement, edit the information, the description, and then we'll also change the properties. Look at the workflow diagram and change this. Here we are in the custom requirement specification. Let's change the description of the electrical engine requirement. I need to hit the inline edit button, and then I can add text. Using the quick insert, I can also insert an image or a table from my file system. On the right hand side, I'll change the type to a constraint complexity standard. As I hit the More menu, I can review the workflow diagram, which gives me an overview of the available statuses. Right now, all my requirements are in a new status. I can send them to the draft status, and then, if I'm ready, to the waiting for approval status. Let's try that. Electrical engine, define. It's the state transition's name, which will take it to the draft status. And then I can click approve, which sends it to the waiting for approval status. To change the properties of multiple items at the same time, we can use the mass edit. I select 3 items here in the tree, and then do a right click, mass edit, to open up the context menu. Business value should be nice to have. I need to save twice, once here and once over there. And then notice the business value has changed. Next, I'm going to complete a round trip. It's very similar to the mass edit. The only difference is that I'm going to do all the changes inside the familiar MS Excel. Over to Codebeamer and more, export to Office. I'll choose the MS Excel tab and the Roundtrip Excel export, which will insert metadata in the header of the file and make it a lot easier to do the import part than if I go for the simple Excel export. I may or may not want to export descriptions. Excel is not the best tool for editing descriptions, but it's perfectly okay for editing the rest. So I'm going to go with that option and just go export and save this into my folder. Once the export is completed, I can use the same drop-down options, validation that I have inside Codebeamer, changing the type to constraints in a number of cases. Okay, let's choose the type legal here and then just copy it down. Okay, when I'm ready with my changes, save the file, close it down and head back to Codebeamer, more import, and I'm going to complete the inbound part of the round trip. Attach file, it still remembers the location, just hit open. Next. There's no need to worry about the mapping because it's done automatically. Next. It's our last chance to review the changes. If we're okay with those, just hit finish and the import is completed. We can use the table view to quickly check multiple records, and here are the type changes that we just initiated. Views inside Codebeamer. We'll add grouping, filtering, and we'll also look at intelligent table view. Let's just use this example with the customer requirement specifications. I'm going to filter, status is new, and I immediately got rid of the record that had the pending approval. Let's add another filter. We can just keep adding them. Type equals legal, and we narrow it down. By default, the interpretation is and, so it has to be both new and legal. We can change that by hitting the and or link in the filter section. You can see the first filter is number 1, second is number 2. To add the logic, we just have to say 1 or 2, and then hit go to experience the result. So now it's either new or legal. The difference is pretty obvious. We can get rid of this filter by hitting the X and then hit go again. It will narrow it down again. If we like the filter that we just created, we can save it into a view by hitting the Manage Tracker Views icon, the eyeballs on the right-hand side. I'm just going to hit Save As, and it's going to be legal. And save. Then reapplying this view is going to be real easy. Let's assume I got rid of all the filters. Just hit go. I get all the records. And then I can navigate back to the views and select this private view. I can also make a view public, and then my colleagues can also access it. Let's experiment with the intelligent table view for a little bit. I'm going to remove these filters just so that I have some records. And then I'll save this into a view. I'm going to make it public so it's available to my colleagues as well. Then while in the intelligent, I can click intelligent table view configuration and add other trackers into the view, like system requirements and test cases. Once it's ready, I'm just going to hit save. Once done with the configuration, let's navigate back to the document view, and in the tree on the side, I can now see customer requirements and their related system requirements, as well as the test cases. Next, we're going to look at ways to reuse requirements from other projects with the library feature. Notice the library icon on the right-hand side. And if you have no projects showing up, that means the library needs to be configured. So let me hit the cogwheel and then pick, let's say, this project here. You'll see all the projects showing up that you have access to. And I'm also going to add my current project into the library. I'll explain why. First and foremost, we can pick that other project. We're now in the customer requirement specification. We can open up the customer requirements and then pick navigation, which is not in my current project. Just drag and drop. Hit close, and it created a copy of that navigation requirement. As I click on it and go to the properties, I can see a new association type connection was added, which is pointing to the original. And the suspected link propagation is also active. Should there be any changes in this requirement in the other project, I'll get a flag or a populated suspected link, which will remind me of that change, and I can evaluate and decide to copy the change or not. As I was moving the requirement over to the tree, notice there are various options enabled in the middle of the screen on the summary. Link to this creates a reference. Depends on creates an association. Related to creates an association. This one can be used to link items in the current project to the requirement. For example, let's say this navigation requirement is associated with the chassis requirement, because the navigation system has to be in the chassis. I'm just going to move it and say depends on, and it was successfully created. But I can only do this after the copy. This would not work cross-project. And I can also establish reference type connections. I can pick a system requirement, which is connected to the customer requirement specification tracker, move it across and click this one. The reference was successfully created. Again, these options only work with items that are sitting in the same project. Let's just try doing this with a different project. So I'm going to pick the suspension, try to move it across to create a reference, error message. Okay, so mind you, you first have to copy over, and then you can establish relationship between items, artifacts inside the current project. Focus on the traceability browser. I'm going to head back to my customer requirement specifications and hit the traceability browser icon here at the top. It's always available on requirement trackers, and we'll also be able to jump to traceability view while we are on the tracker overview right here. Let's do it from the requirements, because then we don't have to specify initial filters. Some of them will be kind of given. Trackers of the current project, system requirement, and level 2 test cases. Hit go. It's important to save your configuration of the traceability browser once you found a view that you're planning to use regularly. I'm just going to hit save current settings, preset name, customer, system, and test case. Makes it a lot easier to go back to it. Notice how the suspected link propagation is active. There was a change in the electrical engine requirement, and that triggered a suspected change on the lower level system requirements. It has a cascading effect. Changes only go one level down. If I accept, let's say, the changes recommended on the emission standard, that will activate the suspected changes on the test case. Let's try that. So I'm going to hit the suspected link and just copy the business value change. Hit save. We can export these these records into Excel for compliance reasons. Exporting to Office, exporting to Excel will create a snapshot of data that you can attach to the document management and show to the auditors at any later point. As you're building your traceability view, recommendations or suggestions show up in the last column. In my current project, I have a task to create high-quality software. It already has a source code commit, and it's connected to a customer requirement for Chassis. Let's take a look at this in the traceability browser. First, we add the customer requirement, then the tasks, hit go, and then using this last column, I'm just going to add the source code commits. You can clearly see here how Codebeamer provides an end-to-end traceability, starting from the requirement down to the tasks and to the final source code commit. We're going to take a look at the powerful features of the Review Hub with e-signatures and multiple people working together as a team for the approval process. Let's select the weight transfer requirement, hit the More menu, and send selection to review. There's no need to include children because it doesn't have any. The name will be weight transfer. In terms of reviewer, I'm going to select Cindy, my approver user. I'm going to be the moderator, and I'll require a signature from the reviewer. The minimum number of signatures will have to be 1. I can also add a deadline to Cindy. That's going to be the 14th. And then hit next. Preview the details and then create the review. There we go. Okay, I can now log in as Cindy and go to my Review Hub, where I'll find one pending task. Click on it. I review this requirement with all its details and references. And then I need to do 2 things. 1, just hit approve, and 2nd, finish the process. And that's the moment when I'll need to insert my password. And sign the review. Done. I can now log back as myself, head over to the Review Hub. Just to get a refresh, I can see how Cindy has already approved it. Green is for approved. I can click on the review, look at the statistics, and complete it as well. Finish the review. I can just simply hit finish or utilize this feature here, set statuses. Remember, before we send it for approval, we set the status to pending approval. Now it's accepted, so I'm going to change it to approved. Accepted for accepted items, draft for items that need more work, and waiting for approval for items that haven't yet been decided. So I'm going to hit finish review, and immediately the task is done. And just check out the weight transfer requirement, which is now perfectly accepted and signed. So that was a quick tour of the approval process in our Review Hub.